Matthew chapter 6, we're going to read verses 19 through 21 together. Let's take a moment to focus on the words that the Lord taught in Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. The Lord said, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." This instruction from our Lord is warning about the dangers of materialism. And this is the way that many people perceive materialism. A man was opening the door of his BMW on the side of the road, and suddenly a car comes screaming by in the outside lane of the highway, and it takes the door, just rips it right off the car. When the police arrive on the scene, the man was complaining bitterly about the damage to his precious BMW. It was his pride and joy. "Officer, look at what they've done to my Beamer," he exclaimed. And the officer replied to him, kind of exasperated a bit, "You're so worried about your stupid BMW, you don't even notice that your left arm is missing." "Oh no," replies the man. "Where's my Rolex?" That's the way people conceive materialism in this world. That joke was devised to draw our attention to the foolishness of materialism. And it's a common one that's been around for a long time. But I want us to consider that materialism has to do with more than money. It has to do with more than shiny things. It's more broadly to be understood as putting an inordinate amount of value upon material existence itself. Our time on the earth, our life here, the things that we have in this life, the concerns of the health of the body, the concerns of the death of the body, the concerns of food and of clothing and of shelter, all of which are right in and of themselves and proper in their place. But we're talking about an inordinate amount of value on these things, an inordinate amount of focus of our time and our thought and our effort on these things. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal." So what he wants us to see and understand here is that the things that are associated with time, the things that sometimes we value immensely that are associated with this earth, they're temporary. And there are things that destroy them, whether it's the processes of time itself, rust, or it's the actions of people, thieves break in and steal, or it's the action of some other actor in creation, moths eat up. It doesn't matter what you talk about, all of these things come to naught. A diamond is not forever. Vinyl is not final. Anything associated with this earth can and will be consumed. "But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal." That's the contrast. The things that are spiritual, unlike material things, are not fleeting. They are not destroyed. They are not consumed. They don't go away. They're not lost to time. They're not lost to theft. They're not lost to consumption. And then he gives a reason why. Look at verse 21 closely. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The reason why you don't need to be materialistic in your outlook in life is because where you hold your heart or your treasure, that's where your heart lies. If the focus of living is here and now, What a pitiable life we have indeed. It is fraught with difficulty. It is fraught with hardship. It is fraught with evil. It is fraught with theft. It is fraught with destruction. It is fraught with illness and death, most of which are completely outside of our control, but causes us great anxiety and loss and suffering. If we hope in this life only, we are of all men to be most pitied, the Bible tells us. Materialism is seen very early on in the Bible. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was the delight to the eyes, that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some fruit to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. There are 4 things in this verse associated with materialism that we want to highlight. Number 1, the idea of preserving the physical body. She saw that it was good for food. That's feeding the body. Making the choice to preserve the physical body over preserving her relationship with God. Do not eat this fruit. In the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. She made a choice to preserve her body when she saw that it was good for food, rather than to preserve her relationship with God. It's materialism. Acquiring shiny things. She saw that it was a delight to the eyes. It was appealing. It was shiny. It was flashy. It looked good. Acquiring shiny things over our relationship with God. That's materialism. Number 3, attaining experience and wisdom in this world. Things that haven't been revealed by God. You remember that passage in Deuteronomy 29, right? Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret things belong to God, but the thing revealed belongs to you and to your children. What God has spoken and given to us, that's important for us to know. What He has not told us, it's not important for us to know. At that time, in that place, in that garden, God had told Adam and Eve everything that they needed to know about life and godliness in their circumstances and in their time. They did not need to know the things that the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil would make known to them. But when she saw that it was desirable to make one wise, to learn about things that she didn't yet know about, to learn about things that God had not told her, she chose attaining that wisdom over holding on to her relationship with God. That's materialism. Finally, number 4, earthly relationships. You'll recall in the New Testament we're told that Adam wasn't deceived. Adam understood and Adam grasped everything that was going on here. When his wife came to him, he did not fall prey to the deception of the devil. He made a conscious choice. When his wife gave him the fruit and he ate, he chose his relationship with Eve over his relationship with God. You'll recall that Jesus teaches us that He has to be first and above all things in all relationships, before father and mother, before husband or wife, before parent or child. When we choose earthly relationships over spiritual relationships, that's materialism. Again, none of these things in and of themselves are wrong. The pursuit of food is a valuable part of our existence. Acquiring knowledge, amassing wealth. Job had immense wealth. Abraham had immense wealth. David, Solomon, all had immense wealth. Not the acquiring of shiny things, but the choosing of shiny things above and beyond our relationship with God. That's when it becomes materialism. An inordinate amount of attention being shown. Same thing with our relationships. Jesus taught and left us an example in living a spiritual rather than a material life. If we're going to follow Jesus, it means that we share in those values. We want to look at a couple of examples from Jesus' life. To begin with, turn to Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 19. We'll read verses 19 and 20 of Matthew 8. And a scribe came up to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Now clearly Jesus had the opportunity in this world, and he had the ability to amass wealth for himself, and he could produce money from the mouth of a fish, according to Matthew chapter 17, verse 27. They had come to him about the poll tax, and he says, "Well, look, just go out there, catch a fish, open his mouth, and you're going to find a coin in the fish's mouth. Use that to pay the poll tax." It wasn't a limit on Jesus' ability to amass wealth or to have a house or to do. That's not his point. John 2:9 teaches us that he could turn water to wine. If someone could do that today, they would have a profitable business. The value of one is much greater than the value of the other. We don't have to wait for the plants to grow. We don't have to worry about whether or not the insects are going to destroy, or whether there's going to be a drought, or whether there's going to be a freeze. We don't have to worry about the process of harvesting and squeezing the juice from the grape. No, we can take a vat of water and it becomes the fruit of the vine tomorrow at will with Jesus. What his point here, when he says to this man who says, "I'll follow you wherever you go," and he says, "Understand that the foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has not where to lay his head," his point is that his priorities were not on earthly things. And he wanted this man to understand, you're going to follow me wherever I go. Understand, that means that you can't be pursuing the things of this life. To follow him, this man would need to share in the priorities that Jesus had. They were not in amassing wealth. They were not in gaining shiny things. They were not in any of those things. They were in pleasing the Father. They were in keeping the will of God. That's where his desire lay. That's where his treasures were. If we're going to follow Jesus, we have to share in those priorities as well. Look at chapter 4, this same book, verses 8, 9, and 10. Matthew 4, 8, 9, and 10. "Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, 'All of these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me.' And Jesus said to him, 'Begone, Satan.'" All the kingdoms of the world here were refused by the one who had nowhere to lay his head. He didn't have a house to go home to. And the promise was, all of the kingdoms of the earth are yours. All of their glory becomes yours. That is their wealth and their power. All of that is yours. He says, "Be gone." Because that's not where his heart lied. A few verses earlier, in this very same context in Matthew 4, we see that Jesus refused to turn the stones into bread when he was extremely hungry, because he said, "Man shall not live by bread alone." Quoted the Word of God. That life is about more than bread. Showed his priorities. The lack of temptations to overpower him demonstrates Jesus' lack of materialism. Unlike Eve, who looked at the fruit and saw that it was good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes, that it was good to make one wise, and being drawn into the material aspects of those things, unlike that, Jesus was able, and in contrast, to put those things aside, even though he was hungry and he could have used some food. That's not where his heart lay. Instead, he said, man shall not live by bread alone. That's how we overcome temptation. That's how we get past these things, because we don't value the material aspects of our existence beyond everything else. We instead are concerned about spiritual things and about our relationship with God. That's the reason we're able to overcome. And by the way, it's also the reason why during a certain period of time in our life when we're young, that it's even harder to overcome some of these things, because we lack the discipline and the training that comes through life, and yet we have all the desire of the body, and that you're deceiving yourself. There's not one of us in this nation who isn't consumed by things in this world, and the desire for them, and the belief that success is defined by our possessions and what we have. You know, believe me, just stop yourself the next time you say that's a successful person, and ask yourself on what basis you've drawn that conclusion. We have to appreciate that, and appreciate the young folks among us who are able. Turn to Luke 21, if you will. By the way, shout out to my youngest son. That last point was from him. Not one that I thought of. I asked the kids that were with me the other day, what passages do you think of when you think about Jesus not being materialistic? And that was one that was offered. Here's another one that was offered by another one of my children. Luke 21, starting in verse 1, Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. And he saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. And he said, truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them, for they all contributed out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on. Now, obviously, this widow was certainly not materialistic, because she just offered everything that she had to live on into the offering box. But that's not what we want to focus on here. We want to focus on Jesus and His reaction. Notice Jesus had a very non-materialistic reaction to these contributions. You see, with a materialistic view of gifts, if somebody donates a $250,000, we get all excited and giddy, and some people even name wings of buildings after them for it. You donate enough money to the construction of this park, we'll call the park after your name. I've actually been by supposed houses of worship that bore the name of the people who paid to erect the building, instead of bearing the name of the one who died to save their souls. Very important. Even if we don't go that far, those kinds of often raise special considerations and respect that are paid to the one who knows what that person is. I've seen what they contribute every week. They're one of our biggest contributors. They're important. They're one of our biggest contributors. We better listen to what they say. A widow does a few dollars doesn't any special consideration of the material. In fact, they don't even own. Thank you. That's how Jesus reacted. He saw this small gift of copper coins being greater than the gifts that were great amount. Because it wasn't about the money, it was about the heart. It was about the intention. It was about purpose. It was about the ability. It was about her giving not out of her abundance, but out of what she had to live on. to the ones who just gave out of their abundance, their extra, that they didn't really need. There's a powerful lesson that comes from Jesus. Turn over to Luke, the 12th chapter, in verse 14. Let's start there in just a moment. As you're doing that, I want you to consider what Jesus has been teaching up to the events we're going to read about in a moment. He's been teaching these people not to be hypocrites. He's been teaching them not to fear those who can merely kill the body. He's been teaching them that God will not forget about them. That God numbers the hairs of the head, so they shouldn't forget God. Instead, they should confess Him before men. He's teaching them not to speak evil against God. And after all of the substantial stuff, verse 15 records that the crowd said, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the hairs with me." He's teaching about all these deep spiritual things that are vital for the relationship with God. Someone looks at Jesus in the middle of this sermon and says, "Would you come over here and sit with me and my siblings about our hairs? Would you tell me to give me my share of the inheritance?" Blatant materialism on this. What they're concerned about from Jesus is helping them money that they think they deserve from their inheritance. We're going to start reading verse 14. Jesus' response. He said to him, "Man, who is made a judge over you?" He said to them, he broadens his saying, he addresses the individual. "I am not your judge in this matter." Then he tells the audience, "Take care and be your heart against all covetousness. For one does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." He told them a parable, saying, "A certain rich man produced plentifully. He said to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' He said, 'I'll do this. I'll tear down my barns and build another one. I will store all my grain and my goods, and I'll say to my soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. I'll be successful.' But I am fool. This is your soul is required of you, and the things you prepare, whose will they be?" Look at verse 21 closely. "So is the one who is up for himself and is not rich toward God." Jesus is teaching these great truths. He's teaching these in a relationship with God. He's teaching how to deliver their soul from death. And this man can only think about money. And he makes clear, I'm not here to adjudicate things. That's the line of the earth, to make sure that you get all of your inheritance. Seek and save him who is lost. I came about your souls. So he tells them, life does not consist in its possession. There's a lesson for Americans. Bumper sticker that was popular back in the day. He who dies with the most toys wins. You know what Jesus said? No, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possession. This man had so many things, he had to tear down his barns and build bigger barns to have more place to store more stuff. And he had so much stuff, he said, you know what, I got years worth of stuff piled up here. And relax and enjoy my stuff. He said, fool. That stuff is going to be in the barn tomorrow, but you're not going to be here. You're standing before God asking for your life. You have laid up for yourselves treasure in heaven, an abundance of possessions. But you're like that. money is going to stay on this earth. Your soul returns to God. My good friend Jack Holt exhorted a group of people on a Sunday morning similar to this. He said, go home, all your verses this afternoon. All of the things that you train. Look at the things that are on your mind. Look at the things that are important to you that you have kept and held on for years and years to understand that they're nothing. Will die. And they will still be there. And you'll learn about who made you. What is valuable in this life is not the things we can possess. What is valuable in this life is the spirit of man that exists beyond time. Material wealth is a valuable thing, being rich toward God. There's where the true value is. I'm going to Jesus' teaching that follows be the conclusion of the morning lesson. Reading verse 22. He said to his disciples, notice he answers first the man that's in the crowd, and he answers the crowds to his disciples. Therefore, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens, neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouses nor barns, yet God feeds them. How much more value are you than the birds? Which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? If then you are able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass, which is a live field today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will He clothe you, O you of little faith? Not like what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be greedy. For all nations of the world seek these things, and find those that you need. Look at verse 1 very closely. If you underline, if you highlight, this is the verse to underline, highlight. Instead of all of those things that the world is consumed by, instead of materialism is a reflection of lack of faith, instead seek His kingdom. And these things added to passing shiny things isn't worth losing. You get. I don't care how many diamond rings you own. I don't care how much money is in the bank. I don't care how big your safe is. I don't care how big your house is. Amassing shiny things is losing your soul. If they're getting between you and God, you need to do what your elder was told. You need to go and sell your possessions and give it to the poor and come follow me. Earthly power and glory are worth losing your soul. The pursuit of these things. In the place of pursuing knowledge of God, relationship with God, they're not worth it. Being impressed by other people's circumstances and how you or some organization can benefit from circumstances. This one is wealth. Let's take special care of him. He can help us. That's how the world thinks. I promise you, you walk into a lot, they're making judgments about how much money they think you have. And the ones that they think have, that's the ones that the salesmen are going to talk to. And they're going to make you happy because they want your money. And they think you have it to give. Same thing in every area. You must hear good peace. Over there. Read your name. Being impressed by circumstances and how you think they can benefit you, or thinking your large gifts are buying you. I do this and I'm giving this and I helped in this and I'm doing this and I'm important. That's just the inverse. Attitude. Equating any of that, faithfulness to God, isn't worth losing your favor. Squabbling or parents in this world is not worth losing your favor. Get a little bigger piece of it, all of it, preventing someone else from getting any of it. It's not worth losing your soul over. Instead, His kingdom and His righteousness. That's what Jesus is saying here. The part of verse 33, provide yourself with money and do not grow old. With treasure in the heavens does not fail. Where the thief approaches, no moth destroys. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. To go to heaven, if you want to be a part of the blessings of God, Jesus says that you need to be pursuing now. Not being consumed by the things on this earth, not being consumed by yourself on this earth, not being consumed by what you see in a mirror, not impressed by your power, by your influence, your wealth. If ones so judge themselves, he says, you fool. Tonight your soul is required of you. And whose will all that be? It won't be anyone's. It'll be left on the earth. And there'll be people squabbling over it. And going to the Lord, Lord, help me share. To them, who made me your judge